The Immortals were an elite unit of 10,000 heavy infantry soldiers in the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Greek historian Herodotus gave them this name. They served in two main roles, as the king's personal bodyguard and as shock troops in battles, forming the strongest part of the Persian army. The unit was mostly made up of Persians, but also included Medes and Elamites. What made them unique was the rule that their number was always kept at exactly 10,000. If a soldier was killed, injured, or unable to serve, another immediately replaced him. This created the image that they could never die out, making them seem immortal and invincible. The Immortals were first formed under the reign of Cyrus II. They fought in famous battles such as Babylon, Egypt, the Indus Valley, Scythia, and Thermopylae. A modern version called the Javadan Guard survived until it was disbanded after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. The Triarii were the veteran backbone of Rome's early legions. Initially chosen from the wealthiest citizens, they could afford the best armor and weapons: bronze helmets, heavy shields, long spears, and short swords. In battle, they always stood at the third and final line of the army, behind the younger Hastati and the more experienced Principes. Most of the time, the Triarii didn't even fight. The first two lines usually decided the battle, but if both failed, the Triarii would step forward as Rome's last hope. This gave rise to the Roman saying, "It has come to the Triarii," meaning the situation was desperate. Over time, selection shifted from wealth to age and experience, emphasizing reliability and skill. Though smaller in number, their presence symbolized discipline, tradition, and Rome's determination to fight to the bitter end. The Sacred Band of Thebes was a special group of 300 soldiers, said to be made up of 150 pairs of partners. It was first organized by Gorgidas in 378 BC. Under leaders like Pelopidas and Epaminondas, the Sacred Band became famous for their bravery and discipline. They won big victories against the Spartans, such as the Battle of Tegea in 375 BC, where 300 men of the band and Theban cavalry defeated about 1,000 Spartans, and the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, where a Theban army of around 8,000, with the Sacred Band at its core, defeated about 11,000 Spartans and ended Spartan control over Greece. For about 40 years, they were the strongest part of the Theban army, until their final stand at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. Here, a Theban-Athenian alliance of around 35,000 faced Philip II of Macedon's army of about 30,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry, led in part by his son Alexander, the future Alexander the Great. The Sacred Band fought until the last man was killed, making it the only time they were ever defeated in open battle. When Philip saw their bodies, he was said to have cried and declared that there was nothing shameful in such a brave and noble death.
The Praetorian Guard was the special guard of the Roman emperors. They protected the emperor, worked as bodyguards, kept order in Rome, gathered military intelligence, and sometimes acted like secret agents. In the Roman Republic, before the empire, they served as escorts for powerful politicians and as bodyguards for top generals. But in 27 BC, when Augustus became Rome's first emperor, he turned them into his permanent personal guard. For 300 years, they were both elite soldiers and a powerful political force. They enjoyed higher pay and rewards, which made them wealthy but disliked by ordinary Romans. Famous for betrayal, they murdered Caligula, declared Claudius emperor, and even auctioned the empire after killing Pertinax. They fought in campaigns like Claudius's invasion of Britain, Trajan's wars in Dacia and Parthia, and Marcus Aurelius's northern battles. Corruption grew until Septimius Severus replaced them with his own men. Their power declined under Diocletian, and in AD 312, Constantine the Great destroyed their camp and disbanded them forever.
The Companions, or Hetairoi, were the elite heavy cavalry of the Macedonian army under Philip II and Alexander the Great. They're considered the first true shock cavalry in Europe, famous for charging directly into massed infantry. Drawn mostly from Macedonian nobles, they had the best horses and armor. Bronze or linen cuirasses, Boeotian helmets, long lances called ziston, and swords like the kopis or xiphos. They carried no shields, relying on speed and power.
The Numidian cavalry were famous horsemen from North Africa, today's Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Morocco. They lived in tribes, some nomadic, some settled, and sometimes united under strong kings. First mentioned in the First Punic War, they rode bareback on small, fast Berber horses, using just a rope and stick to control them. They wore little armor and carried javelins, short swords, and small shields, relying on speed and skill instead of heavy protection. They were masters of hit-and-run attacks, scouting and confusing enemies.
The Medjay were originally a Nubian people from eastern Sudan, first known as herders, but soon feared as fierce warriors and skilled archers. Neighboring kingdoms often hired them as mercenaries, and the Egyptians, once their enemies, eventually turned them into allies. Over time, the Medjay became part of Egypt's army, first as desert scouts and fighters, and later as the pharaoh's elite police and bodyguards. By the New Kingdom, Medjay no longer meant a Nubian tribe, but an elite force trusted to guard palaces, royal tombs, borders, and treasures. They were famous for deadly archery, bronze spears and axes, and even trained dogs and monkeys for patrols. The best of them served as the pharaoh's personal guards in Thebes. After the 20th dynasty, the word Medjay vanished from records, but their reputation lived on. Today, they are remembered as Egypt's elite warriors and appear in popular culture, from the Mummy films to Assassin's Creed Origins.
The Balearic slingers were some of the deadliest ranged warriors of the ancient world. Living on the Balearic Islands near Spain, they grew up using slings for hunting and herding. From childhood, they trained so hard that by adulthood, they could hurl stones or lead bullets over 100 kilometers per hour and hit targets hundreds of meters away. Their skill made them famous mercenaries. The Carthaginians hired them in huge numbers, and Hannibal used them with great success against Rome at battles like Trebia, Trasimene, and even Cannae. Later, Rome itself employed them in its legions. Armed with simple slings, light shields, and sometimes spears or swords, the Balearics could smash armor, break bones, and terrify enemies with whistling projectiles.
The Argyraspides, or Silver Shields, were the elite veterans of Alexander the Great's army. Their name came from the silver-plated shields they carried, which gleamed on the battlefield. They began as hypaspists, Alexander's chosen infantry, commanded by men like Nicanor, Seleucus, and other trusted officers. In India, they took the name Argyraspides and became legendary for their discipline, strength, and unbeatable skill. Even in old age, some in their 60s and 70s, they still crushed younger armies with ease. After Alexander's death, they fought in the wars of the Diadochi, first serving Eumenes. But at the Battle of Gabiene in 316 BC, they betrayed him to Antigonus the One-Eyed in exchange for their treasures and families. Antigonus scattered them, sending them on hopeless missions until they disappeared.
The Spartan Hippites were an elite guard of 300 warriors chosen every year to protect the Spartan kings. In 480 BC, when the Persian king Xerxes invaded Greece with a massive army, King Leonidas led these 300, along with about 7,000 allies from other Greek cities, to defend the narrow pass of Thermopylae. For 2 days, Spartans, Thespians, Thebans, and other Greeks fought side by side, holding back countless Persian attacks with their powerful phalanx formation. The narrow pass gave the smaller Greek force an advantage, and they inflicted heavy losses on Xerxes' army. But on the 3rd day, disaster struck. A Greek named Ephialtes betrayed his homeland by revealing a secret mountain path, allowing the Persians to surround the defenders.
Realizing they were trapped, Leonidas dismissed most of the allies so they could escape. Yet around 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans chose to stay with the 300 Spartans. Surrounded and hopelessly outnumbered, they fought to the last man. Their sacrifice, though a defeat, became a symbol of courage that inspired all of Greece to keep resisting Persia.
The Crypteia was one of Sparta's most mysterious and feared institutions. It was like a secret police force made up of the toughest young Spartans, usually around 18 to 20 years old. After years of brutal training, the best were chosen for the Crypteia. Their mission was to control the Helots, the enslaved population of Sparta, who always outnumbered the Spartans. At night, the Crypteia would move silently through the countryside, armed with daggers. They spied on the Helots, killed any who seemed rebellious, and spread fear to keep them under control.
The Sacred Band of Carthage was the elite force of one of the greatest empires of the Western Mediterranean. While Carthage is famous for war elephants and hired mercenaries, the Sacred Band stood out because it was made up of Carthaginian citizens, the best of the best, chosen for wealth, reputation, and bravery. Around 2,000 to 3,000 strong, they were heavy infantry, armed like Greek hoplites with spears, shields, and fine armor decorated with gold, silver, and religious symbols. They showed incredible courage at battles like Crimesus and White Tunis, fighting to the last man.